The transport ship landed hard on the dusty ground of Eshar. The metal doors opened with a loud sound, and bright light flooded inside. Tiho lifted his head slowly. His hands were bound with energy cuffs that burned his skin whenever he moved too much. Around him, other human prisoners groaned and shifted. They had been traveling for 3 days without food or water. A Velari guard stepped into the transport. He was tall, almost 7 feet, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the sunlight. His eyes were large and filled with soft blue light. He looked at the humans the way someone might look at insects. "Move," the guard commanded in broken human language. "Now." Tiho stood up slowly. His legs were weak, but he forced them to work. He was 32 years old, a combat medic who had served in the human military for 10 years. He had saved hundreds of lives during the war between humans and the Velari, but during his last mission everything went wrong. His rescue team was ambushed. Most of his friends were killed. He was captured. Now he was a prisoner on an enemy world. The guards pushed the humans out of the transport and into a large compound. High walls surrounded the area, topped with energy barriers that crackled with blue electricity. Inside, Tiho could see long fields of strange purple plants, storage buildings, and small homes made of white stone. An older Velari with scars on his face walked toward the group. His uniform showed that he was someone important. Later, Tiho would learn his name was Commander Vorn. "You are prisoners of the Velari Empire," Vorn said. His voice was cold and hard. "You will work in the agricultural fields. You will grow food for our soldiers. If you work hard, you will live. If you cause trouble, you will die. It is simple." Tiho kept his eyes down. He had learned during his military training that the best way to survive as a prisoner was to stay quiet and watch. Learn the rules, find the patterns, wait for the right moment. The guards separated the prisoners into groups and assigned them to different areas of the compound. Tiho was sent to the eastern fields, where he would spend his days planting and harvesting crops under the hot alien sun. The work was hard. The Velari did not care if the humans were tired or hungry or sick. They expected the prisoners to work from sunrise to sunset without rest. Many prisoners collapsed during the first week. Some of them never got up again. But Tiho was strong, not just in his body but in his mind. He had survived worse things than this. He told himself every morning that he would live through another day. And every night when he lay on the cold floor of his cell, he told himself the same thing again. As the weeks passed, Tiho began to notice things about the compound. It was not just a prison. Velari civilians also lived here, mostly families of soldiers who were fighting in the war. There were women and children and elderly people who went about their daily lives as if the human prisoners did not exist. Most of the Velari looked at the humans with hatred or fear. They had been taught that humans were dangerous animals, violent creatures who destroyed everything they touched. The war had lasted for almost 20 years, and both sides had done terrible things to each other. But one Velari did not look at Tiho with hatred. She was a small girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old by human counting. She had silver skin like all Velari, but her eyes glowed with a softer light, more purple than blue. Her name was Lyra, and she was curious about everything. The first time Tiho saw her, she was hiding behind a storage container, watching him work in the fields. When he looked at her, she did not run away. She just tilted her head and stared at him like he was the most interesting thing she had ever seen. Tiho went back to his work, but he could feel her eyes on him. The next day she was there again, and the day after that. Lyra's mother was a Velari female named Kessa. She worked as an administrator in the compound, managing supplies and keeping records. Tiho saw her sometimes, walking between buildings with data tablets in her hands. She was tall and beautiful in the strange way that Velari were beautiful, with sharp features and glowing eyes. But her face was always cold. She never smiled. She never showed any emotion at all. Ti-Ho learned from other prisoners that Kessa's mate had been killed by humans during a battle 2 years ago. She had raised Lyra alone ever since. Her hatred for humans was personal and deep. One evening, after a long day of work, Ti-Ho was walking back to his cell when he saw something that made his blood turn cold. Lyra had wandered away from the civilian area and was now standing near the power generators. These were huge machines that provided energy to the entire compound. They were also extremely dangerous. Signs in Velari language warned everyone to stay away. But Lyra could not read those signs. She was too young. She was just a curious little girl who wanted to see the big machines up close. Ti-Ho saw the warning lights on one of the generators start to flash. He knew what that meant. His training as a medic had included basic knowledge of energy systems. A flash warning meant that a power surge was about to happen. Anyone standing close to the generator would be burned alive. Lyra was standing right next to it. Ti-Ho did not think. He did not consider that she was the daughter of his enemy. He did not worry about what the guards would do to him. He just ran. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. The distance between him and Lyra seemed to stretch forever. His legs burned. His lungs screamed for air, but he kept running. He reached Lyra just as the generator exploded with white light. He grabbed her small body and threw himself forward, using his own back as a shield. The energy surge hit him like a wave of fire. Pain tore through his flesh. He could smell his own skin burning. But he did not let go of Lyra. He wrapped his arms around her and curled his body over hers, protecting her from the heat and light and death. When the surge finally ended, Ti-Ho collapsed on the ground. His back was a ruin of burns and torn flesh. His arms were covered in blisters. Every breath sent waves of agony through his body. But Lyra was alive. She was crying and shaking, but she was not hurt. Ti-Ho looked at her with eyes that were starting to blur. "Are you okay?" he whispered in Velari language. He had learned a few words during his time in the compound. Lyra nodded, tears streaming down her silver face. Then the guards arrived. They saw a human holding a Velari child. They saw the burns on his body and the fear in her eyes, and they came to the wrong conclusion. "Get away from her," one of the guards shouted. He pulled out his shock staff and pointed it at Ti-Ho. Ti-Ho released Lyra gently and raised his burned hands in surrender. He tried to explain what had happened. He tried to tell them that he had saved her. But they did not listen. They did not want to listen. They saw only what they expected to see: a violent human attacking an innocent Velari child. The first blow from the shock staff hit Ti-Ho in the chest. Electricity surged through his already damaged body. He fell to the ground, convulsing with pain. And the beating began. Commander Vorn arrived at the scene with murder in his eyes. He looked at Ti-Ho on the ground, then at the crying Velari child, and his scarred face twisted with rage. He did not ask what happened. He did not want to know the truth. He only wanted someone to punish. "This human attacked a child," Vorn said to his guards. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of death. "Show him what happens to animals who touch our people." The guards formed a circle around Ti-Ho. There were 5 of them, each carrying shock staffs that hummed with blue energy. These weapons were designed to cause maximum pain without killing. They were tools of torture. The first guard struck Ti-Ho across the back, right over his fresh burns. The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt. It was like being set on fire and frozen at the same time. His muscles locked up and his teeth clenched so hard he thought they would break. But he did not scream. He had learned during his military training that screaming only made things worse. It gave the enemy satisfaction. It invited more cruelty. The second blow hit his ribs. He felt something crack inside his chest. The third blow struck his legs. The fourth hit his arms. Again and again, the guards beat him while Vorn watched with cold satisfaction. Ti-Ho fell to the ground. He tried to protect his head with his hands, but the guards kicked them away. A staff came down on his shoulder, and he heard the joint pop out of its socket. Fire shot down his arm, but still he did not scream. Through the haze of pain, he could see Lyra hiding behind a storage container. Her small body was shaking with sobs. She wanted to help him. She wanted to tell the guards that he had saved her life. But she was only a child, and the words would not come out of her mouth. It was okay, Tiho thought. She was safe. That was all that mattered. The beating continued for what felt like hours. Time lost all meaning. There was only pain and darkness and the sound of shock staffs hitting flesh. Sometimes Tiho passed out and the guards would wait for him to wake up before continuing. They were in no hurry. They were enjoying themselves. When it finally ended, Tiho was barely alive. His body was broken in dozens of places. His burns had been torn open by the beating, and blood mixed with the clear fluid that leaked from his wounds. One of his eyes was swollen shut. Several of his ribs were cracked. His shoulder hung at a wrong angle. Two guards grabbed his arms and dragged him across the compound. His legs scraped against the rough ground, leaving a trail of blood in the dirt. Other prisoners watched from behind the fences, their faces pale with horror. Other Velari watched too, some with satisfaction and some with discomfort. They threw him into the isolation cell. It was a small metal box with no windows and no light. The floor was cold and hard. The walls were too close together for him to lie down properly. The door slammed shut behind him, and he was alone in the darkness. For the first day, Tiho did not move. He could not move. He lay on the cold floor and focused on breathing. Each breath was a battle. His broken ribs screamed with every rise and fall of his chest. But he kept breathing because that was all he could do. On the second day, he began to assess his injuries. His training as a medic helped him understand what was wrong with his body. 2 cracked ribs on the left side. 1 cracked rib on the right. Dislocated shoulder. Burns covering most of his back and arms. Possible internal bleeding. Multiple bruises and cuts everywhere. He needed medical attention. He needed water and food and rest. He needed things that he knew he would not get. So he did what he could with what he had. He tore strips of fabric from his tattered uniform and wrapped them around his worst wounds. He found a spot on the wall where the metal jutted out, and he used it to push his shoulder back into its socket. The pain was so intense that he passed out for several minutes. When he woke up, his shoulder was back in place, though it throbbed with a deep ache. He did not receive food or water for 3 days. His lips cracked and bled. His stomach twisted with hunger, but still he held on. He had survived worse. He would survive this. On the 4th day, the cell door opened. Bright light flooded in, and Tiho raised his hand to shield his eyes. When his vision cleared, he saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Kessa. She looked at him with those glowing silver eyes that showed no emotion. Her face was a perfect mask. Tiho could not tell what she was thinking or feeling. "The child told me what happened," she said. Her voice was flat and careful. "She said you saved her from the generator." Tiho tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. He managed to prop himself against the wall, his chest heaving with effort. "She was going to die," he said. His voice came out as a rough whisper. "The power surge would have killed her." "She is the daughter of your enemy," Kessa said. "Why would you risk your life for her?" Tiho thought about the question. It was a good question. By all logic, he should have let Lyra die. She was Velari. Her people were at war with his people. Her mother hated humans. Saving her had brought him nothing but pain. But logic had nothing to do with it. "She is a child," Tiho said simply. "Children are not enemies, they are just children." Kessa stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes, something that might have been confusion or surprise. Then her mask returned and she turned away. "You are a strange human," she said over her shoulder. Then she left and the door closed behind her. Tiho thought that was the end of it. He prepared himself to die alone in this dark cell, but an hour later the door opened again. This time it was not Kessa but a small medical drone. It floated into the cell and began scanning his body with blue light. The drone cleaned his wounds and applied healing gel to his burns. It gave him an injection that dulled the pain. It even provided a small container of water and a packet of nutrient paste. Someone had sent this drone. Someone had decided that he deserved to live. Tiho drank the water slowly, letting each drop wet his cracked lips. He ate the nutrient paste even though it tasted like chemicals. And for the first time since his capture, he felt something other than despair. He felt hope. That night, as he lay in the darkness of his cell, he thought about Kessa. He thought about the way she had looked at him when he explained why he saved Lyra. He thought about the drone that had appeared after her visit. She had sent it, he was certain of that, but why? She hated humans. Her mate had been killed by humans. She had every reason to want Tiho dead. But she had saved him instead. Maybe, Tiho thought, not all Velari were the same, just like not all humans were the same. Maybe there were people on both sides of this war who were tired of the hatred and the killing. Maybe there was a chance, however small, for something different. Or maybe he was just dreaming. Maybe the pain and the hunger and the darkness were making him see things that were not there. But even if it was just a dream, it was a good dream. And for now, that was enough. He closed his eyes and let himself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he would sleep and heal and hold onto that tiny flame of hope burning in his chest. Somewhere out there, a little girl with silver skin and purple eyes was probably lying in her bed, thinking about the human who had saved her life. And somewhere else, her mother was probably asking herself questions she had never asked before. The war was not over. The hatred was not gone. But something had changed in this small compound on this distant world. Something had begun. The days passed slowly as Tiho recovered from his injuries. His body was strong, and the medical drone returned every night to treat his wounds. The burns on his back began to heal, though they would leave scars that would mark him forever. His ribs mended themselves piece by piece. His shoulder still ached when he moved it too quickly, but the joint stayed in place. After 2 weeks, the guards released him from the isolation cell and sent him back to work in the fields. But something had changed. His work assignments were lighter now. Instead of carrying heavy loads under the hot sun, he was given tasks in the shade. His food rations were doubled. The guards still watched him with cold eyes, but they did not beat him anymore. The other prisoners noticed these changes. They whispered among themselves, wondering what had happened. Some thought Tiho had made a deal with the Velari. Some thought he had betrayed his people. One man even called him a traitor to his face. Tiho did not respond. He knew the truth, and that was enough. Kessa began visiting him in the evenings. At first, her visits were short and formal. She asked questions about human biology so she could adjust the medical drone. She asked about his injuries and whether he needed different treatments. Her voice was always cold and professional. But as the weeks passed, her visits grew longer. She began asking different questions, not about his body but about his life. "Why did you become a medic?" she asked one evening. They were sitting in a small garden behind the medical building, a place where Velari civilians sometimes came to relax. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Tiho thought about the question. It had been so long since anyone had asked him about his past. "I grew up in a small town on Earth," he said. "When I was young, there was an accident at a factory. Many people were hurt. I watched the medics work to save them. They were so calm, so focused. They did not care about who the injured people were. They just cared about saving lives." He paused, looking at his hands. "I wanted to be like them." Kessa was silent for a moment. "But you joined the military." "Yes, because I wanted to save the lives of soldiers. When men and women go to war, they need people who can bring them home alive." He looked at her. "I have never killed anyone. In 10 years of service, I have never taken a life, only saved them. Kessa's eyes flickered with something T-Ho could not read. Your people have killed many of mine. I know, and your people have killed many of mine. He did not look away from her gaze. War is terrible for both sides, but I believe that most people, human or Velari, are not evil. They are just afraid. They fight because they think they have no other choice. Kessa stood up abruptly. For a moment, T-Ho thought he had said something wrong, but then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. My mate believed all humans were monsters. He died believing that. I am sorry for your loss, T-Ho said gently. Kessa did not respond. She simply walked away into the fading light, but she came back the next evening, and the evening after that. During this time, Lyra became T-Ho's constant companion. She appeared wherever he went, watching him with those curious purple eyes. At first, she kept her distance, still a little afraid, but as the days passed, she grew bolder. One afternoon, she walked up to him while he was resting under a tree. She held something in her small hands. It was a smooth stone, pale blue with streaks of silver running through it. For you, she said in her soft voice. T-Ho took the stone carefully. It was warm from her hands and surprisingly beautiful. Thank you, he said in Velari. Lyra smiled. It was the first time he had seen her smile, and it transformed her face completely. She looked like any child from any world, happy and innocent and full of wonder. After that, she brought him gifts almost every day. A dried flower, a piece of fruit stolen from the kitchens, a drawing she had made on a piece of paper. Each gift was simple, but T-Ho treasured them all. She also asked him endless questions about Earth. Did humans really live in cities that touched the sky? Did they have animals called dogs that loved their owners? Did they have families like Velari families? T-Ho answered every question as best he could. He told her about the blue oceans and green forests of Earth. He told her about dogs and cats and birds. He told her about human families, about parents who loved their children and children who loved their parents. Will you teach me your language? Lyra asked one day. T-Ho smiled. What do you want to learn? He taught her simple Korean words. Hello, goodbye, thank you, friend. Lyra repeated them with her lilting accent, delighting in the strange sounds. She practiced every day until she could say them perfectly. Kessa watched these interactions from a distance. T-Ho could feel her eyes on them, but she never interrupted. Sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, he saw something soft in her expression, something that looked almost like gratitude. One night, Kessa came to him with a question that had clearly been burning in her mind for a long time. I need to understand something, she said. They were alone in the garden, surrounded by the quiet sounds of the alien night. When you saw Lyra near the generator, why did you run toward her? You must have known what would happen. You must have known the guards would punish you. T-Ho considered his answer carefully. This was important. He could feel it. On Earth, he said, we have a belief. We believe that children belong to everyone, not just their parents. Every adult has a duty to protect every child. It does not matter if the child is a stranger. It does not matter if the child belongs to an enemy. A child is a child. Kessa shook her head slowly. But the risk, the pain, how can that be worth it for someone else's child? Because a child represents the future, T-Ho said. When I looked at Lyra, I did not see a Velari. I did not see an enemy. I saw a little girl with her whole life ahead of her. I saw someone who might grow up to do great things, to love and be loved, to make the universe a better place. He paused. How could I let that future be destroyed when I had the power to save it? Kessa was quiet for a long time. The stars wheeled overhead, alien constellations that T-Ho still did not recognize. Finally, she spoke. My mate would have let a human child die, she said softly. He would have watched and felt nothing. He would have called it justice. And what would you have done? Kessa met his eyes. In the starlight, her silver skin seemed to glow from within. "Before I met you, I think I would have done the same. I hated your people so much. I blamed all humans for taking my mate from me. And now—" She looked away. "Now I do not know what I believe anymore. You have confused everything I thought I understood." Tiho reached out and gently touched her hand. She flinched but did not pull away. "Maybe being confused is the first step toward finding a new truth," he said. Kessa looked at their hands, her silver fingers against his brown skin. Two different species, two different worlds, two people who should have been enemies. But in that moment, under the alien stars, they were just two people trying to understand each other. It was a small thing, but sometimes small things can change everything. The peace of the compound was shattered on a morning that started like any other. Tiho was working in the fields when he heard the sound of military transports landing near the main gate. He looked up and saw 3 large ships with the markings of the Velari High Command. An inspection team had arrived. The guards became nervous and aggressive. They shouted at the prisoners to work faster, to keep their heads down, to make no trouble. Tiho understood immediately that something was wrong. Important visitors meant important problems. He found out the truth later that day. Among the inspection team was a Velari named High Commander Soren. He was the brother of Kessa's dead mate. He was also one of the most powerful military leaders in the Velari Empire, a man who had built his career on hatred of humans. Soren walked through the compound with cold, calculating eyes. He inspected the fields, the storage buildings, the prisoner quarters. He spoke with Commander Vorn and reviewed the records of productivity. And everywhere he went, he left fear in his wake. It did not take long for him to notice that something was strange. The human prisoners were too healthy. Their wounds had been treated. Their rations had been increased. They worked steadily but without the desperate exhaustion that marked most prison camps. And there was one human in particular who drew his attention. A man who worked in the shade instead of the sun. A man who received visits from a Velari administrator. A man who played with a Velari child like they were friends. Soren investigated. He asked questions. He looked at records. And slowly the truth became clear to him. That evening, he called a public gathering in the main square of the compound. All the Velari civilians were required to attend. All the prisoners were forced to watch from behind the fences. Commander Vorn stood beside Soren with an uncomfortable expression on his face. Kessa was dragged to the center of the square by 2 guards. Her face was pale but proud. She refused to look down or show weakness. "This woman," Soren announced in a voice that carried across the compound, "has betrayed her people and the memory of her mate. She has shown kindness to our enemies. She has allowed a human prisoner to spend time with her child. She has brought shame upon the name of my brother." Whispers spread through the crowd. Some Velari looked at Kessa with disgust. Others looked confused or uncomfortable. "The human who corrupted her will be executed at dawn," Soren continued. "Let this be a lesson to all who would show mercy to our enemies. Humanity is a disease. The only cure is complete destruction." 2 guards seized Tiho from behind the fence and dragged him into the square. They threw him to the ground in front of Soren. The High Commander looked down at him with pure hatred in his glowing eyes. "You have caused much trouble for a mere prisoner," Soren said, "but your trouble ends tomorrow." Tiho met his gaze without fear. "I saved a child's life. If that is a crime, then I accept my punishment." Soren's face twisted with anger. He kicked Tiho hard in the ribs, right where the bones had only recently healed. Pain exploded through Tiho's body, but he did not cry out. "Take him to the isolation cell," Soren ordered. "Double the guards. I want no mistakes." As the guards dragged Tiho away, he caught Kessa's eyes. She looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. It was not fear or sadness. It was determination. That night, Lyra found a way to sneak to the isolation cell. The guards had been watching the main paths, but she knew all the hidden routes through the compound. She was small enough to slip through gaps in the fences and quiet enough to avoid being seen. She pressed her face against the bars of Tiho's cell. Tears streamed down her silver cheeks. "I told my mother," she whispered. "I told her you cannot die. You saved me. You are my friend." Tiho moved closer to the bars. His body hurt from the kick, but he ignored the pain. "Lyra, listen to me carefully. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" "I do not want you to die," Lyra sobbed. "Please do not die." Tiho reached through the bars and gently touched her face. "I know, I do not want to die either, but sometimes doing the right thing means accepting the consequences. I saved you because it was right. I would do it again, even knowing what would happen." "But it is not fair," Lyra cried. "You are good. Good people should not be punished." "The universe is not always fair," Tiho said softly. "But that does not mean we should stop being good. Being good is not about rewards or punishments. It is about who we choose to be." Lyra threw her arms through the bars and hugged him as best she could. Tiho held her small body and let her cry against his shoulder. He wished he could promise her that everything would be okay, but he would not lie to her. "Go back to your mother," he finally said. "She needs you, and you need to be safe." Lyra pulled away, wiping her eyes. "I will never forget you," she said in Korean. The words were awkward but clear. "Friend." Then she disappeared into the darkness, and Tiho was alone again. But Kessa had not been idle. Throughout the night, she worked on a plan. She gathered evidence of everything that had happened. The medical records that showed Tiho's injuries from saving Lyra, the security footage from the generator explosion, the testimony of other Velari who had seen the truth. She called in every favor she had ever earned. She contacted people in the Velari government who had grown tired of the endless war. She found allies among the moderate factions who believed that peace was possible. And she prepared a broadcast. At dawn, as the guards led Tiho to the execution platform, something unexpected happened. The compound's communication screens flickered to life. Instead of the normal announcements, they showed a video. It was Kessa, speaking directly to the Velari High Council. "I am Administrator Kessa of Compound 7, she said. Her voice was steady and strong. "I have evidence of a great injustice that is about to occur. A human prisoner is about to be executed for the crime of saving my daughter's life." The video showed the security footage of Tiho running toward Lyra, throwing his body over hers, shielding her from the explosion. It showed the beating that followed, the isolation cell, the 3 days without food or water. "This man showed mercy to an enemy child," Kessa continued. "He risked his life for someone he had every reason to hate, and for this, he is being sentenced to death." She looked directly into the camera. "Is this who we are? Is this what we want our children to learn? That kindness is a crime, that saving a life is worthy of death." The broadcast spread across the Velari communication network. It reached the High Council. It reached news networks. It reached ordinary citizens who watched with growing unease. Soren was furious. He ordered the guards to shoot Tiho immediately before any response could come. But at that moment, a priority transmission arrived from the High Council itself. The execution was to be stopped. The prisoner was to be transferred to neutral custody pending a formal review. Soren screamed with rage. He argued and threatened and demanded, but he could not defy a direct order from the council. The entire compound was watching. The entire Velari Empire was watching. As the guards released Tiho from his chains, he looked across the square and found Kessa. She stood tall among the crowd, her head held high. He bowed to her in the human gesture of respect, and she inclined her head in return, the Velari gesture of acknowledgement. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. 6 months had passed since that morning in the compound square. The universe had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Tiho's case had become famous across both human and Velari space. The video of his testimony before the Joint Tribunal was broadcast on every news network. People watched as he spoke about the child he saved and the mother who saved him in return. He did not talk about hatred or revenge. He talked about hope and the possibility of understanding between enemies. The effect was profound. On both sides of the war, people began asking questions they had never asked before. Were all humans really monsters? Were all Velari really cruel? Or had both species been taught to hate each other by leaders who benefited from the conflict? Peace movements grew stronger. Moderate politicians gained support. The military leaders who wanted endless war found themselves facing growing opposition. The neutral zone was established 6 months after Tiho's testimony. It was a network of space stations positioned between human and Velari territory, places where the two species could meet safely. The stations were designed for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. They represented the first real hope for peace in 20 years of war. Kessa and Lyra were among the first Velari to move to the neutral zone. Kessa's broadcast had made her a hero to the peace movement but a traitor to the war faction. She could no longer live safely in Velari space, but she did not mind. She believed in what she had done, and she was ready for a new life. She found work as a cultural liaison, helping humans and Velari understand each other. It was difficult work. Both species carried deep wounds from the war. Misunderstandings were common. Anger sometimes flared. But slowly, day by day, bridges were being built. Lyra enrolled in a mixed school where human and Velari children learned together. At first, the children were cautious around each other. The human children had been taught to fear Velari. The Velari children had been taught that humans were dangerous, but children are adaptable. Within a few weeks, they were playing together, sharing food, teaching each other games from their home worlds. Lyra made many friends, both human and Velari. She became known as the girl who was saved by a human, and other children often asked her to tell the story. She told it proudly, always ending with the same words. "He saved me because children are not enemies. Children are just children." Tiho was offered many positions after his release. Human military leaders wanted him to become a symbol of their cause. Political groups wanted him to speak for them. News networks wanted interviews. He refused them all. He only wanted one thing. He requested assignment as a medical advisor to the Joint Peacekeeping Force in the neutral zone. His request was granted, but he added one condition. He wanted to be stationed on the same station where Kessa and Lyra lived. The night before his transport arrived, Kessa stood alone on the observation deck of Station Harmony. Through the large windows, she could see the stars spreading across infinity. She thought about her mate, the man she had loved, the man who had died hating humans. She wondered what he would think if he could see her now. Would he be angry? Would he feel betrayed? Or would he understand that she had found a better way? She did not know the answer. Maybe she would never know, but she had made peace with her choice. She could not change the past, but she could shape the future. When Tiho's transport docked at the station, Lyra was waiting at the arrival gate. She had been counting the days for weeks, driving her mother crazy with constant questions about when he would arrive. Now she stood bouncing on her feet, unable to contain her excitement. The doors opened and Tiho stepped through. He looked healthier than he had in the compound. The scars on his back were hidden beneath his clothes, but they would never fully heal. They were part of him now, a reminder of the choice he had made. Lyra ran toward him, shouting in a mix of Korean and Velari. She crashed into his arms, and he lifted her off the ground in a spinning hug. "You came back," she cried. "Mother said you would, but I was not sure." Tiho held her close. His eyes were wet, though he would deny it later. "I made a promise," he said. "I told you I would come." Kessa approached slowly. She watched them embrace, and something warm spread through her chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was happiness. She stopped a few feet away from them, suddenly uncertain. So much had changed between her and T-Ho. They had exchanged messages during the past 6 months, sharing thoughts and feelings that went beyond friendship. But they had not seen each other face to face. She did not know how to act. T-Ho set Lyra down and turned to face Kessa. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The stars shone through the windows behind them. The station hummed with the quiet sounds of life. Then Kessa stepped forward and placed her hand over his heart. It was a Velari gesture, one that carried deep meaning. Among her people, it was used only between family members or mates. "Among my people," she said softly, "when someone saves a life, they become responsible for it. You saved my daughter. You saved me in more ways than you know. By our customs, you are bound to us forever." T-Ho placed his hand over hers, feeling the warmth of her silver skin. "And among my people," he said, "when someone saves your life in return, they become family." Lyra looked between them with wide eyes. She was young, but she understood that something important was happening. "Does this mean you are staying?" she asked. T-Ho smiled down at her. Then he looked at Kessa, at this woman who had been his enemy and had become something far more. "It means I am home," he said. The years that followed were not easy. The war did not end overnight. There were setbacks and failures and moments when peace seemed impossible. Some humans refused to trust Velari. Some Velari refused to forgive humans. The hatred ran deep on both sides. But slowly, things changed. Trade routes opened between the two civilizations. Cultural exchanges became common. Mixed families like the one T-Ho and Kessa built together became symbols of hope. Lyra grew up speaking 3 languages. She became a diplomat who worked to maintain the peace her parents had helped create. She often told her story to young people from both species, hoping to inspire them the way she had been inspired. "My father," she would say, "taught me that enemies are just people we have not tried to understand yet. He showed me that one act of kindness can change everything." T-Ho and Kessa grew old together on Station Harmony. They watched the universe change around them, watched the walls between species slowly crumble. They knew they had played a small part in that change, and they were proud. Sometimes, late at night, they would stand together on the observation deck and look at the stars. T-Ho would hold Kessa's hand, his brown fingers intertwined with her silver ones. "Do you ever regret it?" Kessa asked him once. "The beating, the scars, the pain you suffered." T-Ho thought about the question. He thought about the burns and the broken ribs and the 3 days in darkness. He thought about the moment when he saw Lyra standing near the generator, seconds away from death. "No," he said finally, "I would do it all again. Every moment of pain was worth it for this, for you, for Lyra, for the future we helped create." Kessa leaned her head against his shoulder. "You taught me something," she said. "You taught me that love is stronger than hate. I thought I knew that before, but I did not really understand it until I met you." T-Ho kissed the top of her head. "We taught each other," he said. "That is what makes this work, not one side saving the other. Both sides reaching toward each other, meeting in the middle." They stood in silence, watching the stars. And somewhere out there, across 2 civilizations that were slowly learning to be friends, the story of the human who saved an enemy's child was being told again and again. It was told in schools and homes and government halls. It was told by parents to their children at bedtime. It became more than a story. It became a legend. And legends, as everyone knows, have the power to change the world. This is what it means to be human. Not strength or technology or the will to survive, but the ability to love those who were taught to hate us, to see the person behind the enemy, to choose mercy when revenge would be easier. This is what T-Ho taught the universe. And the universe slowly learned.